Sound on the Move by Emily Gibson and Tesselae Jen. Here's the table of contents. We're going to read how do animals communicate, how do humans communicate, how do messages travel through the air, water, and ground, how do mountain bluebirds communicate. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop for today. How do animals communicate? Big or small, animals all over the world communicate. Animals communicate for many reasons. They communicate to find mates, to send warnings, and more. Animals can send some messages using body language and other signals. However, they often need to rely on sound. Different kinds of animals make many different sounds. Still, animal sounds all have one thing in common. All of these sounds have to travel to reach other animals. Sometimes animal sounds have to travel very long distances. How do humans communicate? Just like other animals, humans have lots of different ways to communicate. We can point, smile, frown, laugh, or cry. Of course, we also talk. When we talk, we form words with the mouth, but that's not all. To speak, we push air out of the lungs, up the throat, and out of the mouth. Along the way, the air moves through a structure in the throat called the voice box. If you look at the illustration here and the caption says, like other animals, we have structures that help us make sounds. And here are our structures: voice box, the mouth, and lungs. As the air from the lungs passes through the voice box, it vibrates the vocal cords. The vocal cords are flaps of skin and muscle on the sides of the voice box. The vibration of the vocal cords creates sound. The sound travels up the throat, out the mouth, and through the air until it reaches the person who hears us. That person is the listener. As you read this book, you might notice that the structures some animals use to communicate are similar to the structures humans use. Of course, you'll always see some big differences in the ways animals make sounds to communicate. How do messages travel through the air, water, and ground? Many animals send sounds through the air, just like us. Others communicate underwater. Some animals even send sounds through the ground. The air, the water, and the ground are all materials. So is everything else you can touch. Materials are made up of millions and millions of tiny pieces called particles. Particles are too small to see, even with a microscope. We can't see particles, but we can visualize them. The diagram on the next page can help. Particles can move. Even in a solid material like the ground, the particles can move a little bit. Animals send out sounds by moving the particles that make up materials like the air, water, and ground. Let's look at some examples of animal communication. We'll zoom in on these invisible world of particles to see how sounds travel through different materials. Okay, now here's another visual and a caption here. This says, the ground, the water, and even the air are all made up of tiny particles. Look at how they're arranged. This one up here, they're further apart, but they are moving. See the arrows? These are very close together, but they're still moving. Look at how these are moving. How do mountain bluebirds communicate? Mountain bluebirds are common in the mountains of the western United States. These birds spend most of their time flying through the air. At dawn, mountain bluebirds sing a loud chirping song. They sing a softer warbling song during the rest of the day. Like all birds, mountain bluebirds use the air to communicate. Air is the material that mountain bluebird songs travel through. Remember that air is made up of tiny particles. We can't see these particles, but a diagram like this one can help us visualize them. What do you notice about the air particles? you might see that the particles have lots of room to move freely, just like we noticed on this other page. I'm just going to go back. This up here is the air. This here is how the particles are arranged in the water. And this here is the ground. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so let's get back to looking at these air particles. What do you notice about the air particles? You might see that the particles have lots of room to move freely. Now here, this is a very busy page. So we have a picture of a bluebird here. Look at the lungs. They have lungs just like we do. And then this here is zoomed in right here. This is called the syrinx, okay? And then it's going to tell us about the syrinx. I think we should read that right away. Do you notice that the syrinx splits into two parts? This allows mountain bluebirds to make two sounds at the same time. Wow. Okay, and then there's a diagram down here. Let's look at this. It says this diagram shows air particles colliding in a wave pattern. Oh my gosh, that looks so familiar, everyone. It represents the sound wave of a mountain bluebird's song. The sound wave begins at a source and travels to a listener. Here's the source, right? Here's the listener. And this is the sound energy traveling as a sound wave through the air. All right, let's read. Mountain bluebirds are a type of songbird. All songbirds have a special body part called a syrinx. The syrinx is different from the human voice box. With its syrinx, a mountain bluebird can make two sounds at the same time. To make sounds, a bluebird sends air through its syrinx. The moving air vibrates the walls of its syrinx. When the syrinx walls vibrate, I'm right here now. When the syrinx walls vibrate back and forth, they disturb the nearest particles of air. These particles then collide with the air particles next to them. Those particles collide with the next particles, over and so on. We call this pattern of motion a sound wave. We know that. The vibrating syrinx is the source of the sound wave. The sound wave travels by way of particle collision. Wait, the sound wave travels by way of particle collisions all the way to the bird hearing the call. That bird is the listener. Or if we're listening, we're the listener. Or if we hear it, I should say. Okay, we're going to stop right there, everyone. All right, and you'll get the second half of this book in the next lesson. All right.